Hi, friends, and thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode of the Plant Peace Podcast. Today, we are going to be talking about more wild animals, and we're going to be talking about two types of insects, silkworms and bees. Now, if you're new to today's podcast, then welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Here at the Plant Peace Podcast, we go through my book, Plant Peace, which a little pen sticking out of it right now. This book covers a wealth of information largely centered around animal rights, animal exploitation, and how we as humans can help our non-human friends on this planet, and how helping them also helps us in return. Health-wise, the health of our planet, and really just energetically, not having mass death camps all around the world, I feel like is a good thing for everyone. So yeah, without further ado, we're gonna just kind of get right into it. I hope that you've had a really good day today. I've had a pretty good day. It's rainy, and that was a shock because it's been sunny the past few days, and it's been so nice, and I was expecting sun, and that's not what I got, but that's okay, because it has kind of locked me inside a little bit, which is a little nice, have a rainy day with some warm matcha and pancakes. Also, I just downloaded an app. It is called the Daily Dozen, I think. Dr. Greger, who is a plant-based doctor, he has a list of a dozen foods / there's like an activity, like a exercise. So it's like 11 foods that is consumed to eat every single day in order to get all of the nutrition we quote should be getting in a day. And I've been feeling like my diet could be more balanced because I usually get in a trend of eating like the same thing repeatedly. And I know that that's not, the best. I know variation can be helpful. And so I've downloaded that app, and that's been like super helpful. I've been like adding flax seeds and chia seeds into like a pancake, and making sure to like eat fruit on top of it, and making sure to eat more beans, and really just like making sure to support my body. And I made these little immunity shots with fresh squeezed lemon juice and some water and turmeric and cayenne pepper, and that might be it. I think I added a tiny bit of maple syrup in there because I was like, this is gonna be rough. But yeah, I didn't drink one this morning because we woke up so early to go to the gym, but I've been having those, and those have been a kick, but I think they've been helpful. I feel like I've been feeling better. Yeah, so I don't know, there's just a little update with me and some things I've been doing, and if any of it feels like it's calling to you, then maybe consider it. Yeah, I also learned, I finally saw a chiropractor because my massage therapist told me a while ago that I should, because my legs weren't even, or my hips weren't, well, both. And I did, and they took some x-rays, and he was like, yeah, so one of your legs is like shorter than the other. And I was like, because I'm out of alignment, or like literally shorter? And he was like, yeah, like literally shorter. And I was like, fantastic. So I bought these little like foot insole things to help balance out my legs. So I'm hoping that that's helpful, and I'm gonna, I don't know, keep seeing him. But that was a little jarring to learn, but made sense because I've been having some just weird kind of body like aches and pains, and also have like a disc out of place. Yeah, it made sense. I was like, oh, this is why I'm so sensitive in these areas. Great. But I am on the path to healing. It's the first time I've seen, a chiropractor in a good long minute. So yeah, I'm hopeful for sure. Well, moving the hopeful energy forward. Let's dive into our main topic today, which is these animals. So today we are going to start with deer. Deer are cautious herbivores who often travel in small family units or herds. Depending on the region and local population, deer herds can grow to have up to 100,000 members. There are about 50 known species of deer spanning across every major continent aside from Antarctica. Each species of deer has a different set of characteristics and lifespan, but on average they can live to be 10 to 25 years old. Deer are both playful and peaceful and can make long-lasting friendships with members of other species. They have an incredible sense of hearing and the ability to rotate their ears without moving their head. Their sense of smell is heightened as well to allow them to pick up the scent of predators. Depending on the region, deers have a wide variety of natural predators, including wolves, cougars, coyotes, black bears, and alligators. Due to the declining number of natural predators, humans are deer's biggest threat. Around 6 million deer are killed by hunters and over 1 million by cars every year. Hunters like to say that these creatures are overpopulated and that they must be killed off by humans to maintain a healthy ecosystem. I feel that the assumption that another group is either overpopulated or invasive is quite a bold statement coming from our species. With that said, who crowned us the right to murder anyone we don't want around? In the areas where deer are truly overpopulated, it's because humans kill off all their natural predators, which then throws the ecosystem way out of whack. Any animals that are seen as a threat to humans, wolves, coyotes, foxes, bears, mountain lions, are hunted down and killed. Entire wolf packs are sometimes executed for the crime of existing. If the deer population in some regions is a problem, then a simple solution would be to stop killing animals that naturally hunt them. The reality, though, is that a majority of those who hunt like to call it a sport. They enjoy it. Unlike actual predators who generally go for the weakest link of a herd, which preserves ideal genetics for futures to come, humans want the biggest antlers to hang on their walls so they can get the strongest male they can find. When being chased by a wolf pack, deer have some sort of chance for survival. But when a human shoots them multiple times with a gun from a long distance, they're relatively defenseless. Those who were shot that do escape their killer's grasp often suffer immensely before slowly dying. It's a gross violation of natural order and tears families apart. There are videos easily found online of a baby deer desperately trying to wake up their mother, who was just shot and killed by hunters, now laughing at the infant's despair. Hunting is often called a sport as a way to pass off a cruel, needless killing spree as a socially acceptable, wholesome activity. However, sports involve competition between two consenting parties and the mediation of a referee, and no sport ends with the deliberate death of one unwilling participant. That was a quote. I would like to add that there are some instances, like Indigenous people who live off the land, where hunting is actually done for necessity. Hunting because that's the only way you're able to survive the winter, and hunting for fun on the weekends are two completely different things. When you look at most Indigenous beliefs, they're centered around the respect for life, death, and the souls of all of Earth's creations. This way of thinking differs greatly from the way most humans view other animals, and this is why we've gotten where we are now as a society. In addition to hunting, one form of deer is facing wildlife extinction and is increasingly kept in captivity: reindeer. In the 48 continuous states, there are only 3 wild reindeer left, of which all 3 are female. In Canada, their last remaining herd has 4 members. For these herds, the loss of their natural habitat and the wrath of human hunters has been devastating. For those who live in captivity, especially in the States, they're often kept alone in a small stall or shed and used as a holiday prop. Their primary natural behaviors, such as living a nomadic lifestyle within a herd, are taken away from them for human entertainment. Wolves, coyotes, cougars, and bears. I've grouped these animals together because they are all killed off for being a threat to humans and their livelihood. USDA Wildlife Services, which is a government branch tasked specifically with killing wild animals, has massacred 1.5 million wild animals in 2020 alone. The number of predators killed by this organization annually is estimated around 100,000. Methods of murder range from aerial shooting to poison and gas to deadly traps and snares. Several non-target animals, such as endangered species and domesticated animals, accidentally detonate some of the traps left and die as well. These deaths are often hidden and blatantly lied about by the rogue government agency that is Wildlife Services. I will be going over each individual predator species briefly. Wolves are pack animals that can live to be 13 to 16 years old and act as the genetic ancestors of all dogs. They are loyal to their alphas and sometimes even stay by each other's sides if one of them is caught in a snare. They are what's known as a keystone species, meaning their existence is vital for the ecosystem they live in. They typically hunt animals who are sick, injured, or weak, which preserves the strongest genetics for the deer, elk, or bison they hunt. Their leftovers feed other predators such as coyotes, bears, eagles, and crows. The effects of their importance was viewed directly in Yellowstone National Park when they killed all of the wolves living there in the 1920s. There's a documentary, I haven't watched it, but Justin told me about it, and it was about Yellowstone and like how that national park came to be and how it was just literally a land grab from the indigenous people. They're like, I see you live here, but this is now a national park. Get out. So yeah, that's there too. I don't know if I finished my sentence, so I'm gonna read it again. The effects of their importance was viewed directly in Yellowstone National Park when they killed all of the wolves living there in the 1920s. This culling led to their primary prey, elk, exploding in numbers, which resulted in overgrazing of willows and aspens. This decimated the beaver population as their dam material was reliant on what the elk had eaten up. This made marshy areas created by the beavers into streams, which actually destroyed many plant species. Bears, magpies, eagles, and ravens struggled without the year-round remains of wolf prey to feed on, and coyotes became the apex predator. Rodent and fox populations were greatly harmed by the coyotes' rule. It wasn't until 1995 that wolves were reintroduced into the park, which got the elk population down to a healthy number, amplified the beaver population by 12, halved the coyote population, and supported many other plant and animal species. We need wolves in order to have a healthy environment, but following a nihilistic trend, humans remain a critical threat to wolves. In March of 2021, Wisconsin hunters killed at least 216 wolves in 60 hours. As you've just read the paragraph above, you can guess how this is likely to impact the environment. This hunt also took place during their breeding season. It's likely that many of the wolves killed were either pregnant or new mothers that will not be able to support their pups. The true damage of this hunt is unknown to us, but it's deeply apparent to those who have lost their lives, mothers, partners, or children. Tens of thousands of wolves have been slaughtered by humans in North America, and unfortunately the hunt continues on today. In Idaho, a bill which allows the killing of 90% of the state's wolves was just signed into law. The motivating force behind the culling is animal agriculture. Coyotes are a member of the dog family that weigh about 20 to 50 pounds. They live to be 10 to 12 typically and spend their life with a small pack. Differing from wolves, they often hunt alone or in pairs. This is likely attributed to the smaller nature of their prey. They are most active in the nighttime and spend their days resting in dens. Highly adaptable animals, coyotes are found in deserts, grasslands, and forests in the Americas. They have been here for over 1 million years, and even though humans kill around 500,000 of them yearly, nearly one every minute, their population always seems to bounce back stronger than ever in response. Even though they have this unique ability, it still doesn't warrant trapping them, shooting them from helicopters, and hunting them with dogs, which seems extra fucked up because they're like genetic siblings. Wildlife killing contests often target coyotes in particular, and the manner in which they are beaten to death is brutal. Some of these coyotes who are trapped are then skinned, and their fur has been sold to companies such as Canada Goose. Coyotes will be trapped for hours on end with their leg wedged in between steel. Some mother coyotes have even tried chewing off their feet to escape the death trap. Recently, due to years of pressure campaigning, this company has pledged to no longer use new fur in their products. This is a massive win for coyotes, yet they still face persecution for just being alive. Cougars are largely solitary felines, weighing up to 200 pounds, that occupy the Americas, primarily in rocky regions. Cougars are also known as panthers, pumas, and mountain lions. Sitting on top of the food chain, they can jump up at 20 feet in the air and hunt anyone in between a moose and an insect. They typically avoid humans, although there have been several documented cougar attacks. This often happens when we get too close to their young or they are starving. We are much more likely to get attacked by a dog than a cougar, though. However, whenever a cougar attack does occur, they are always hunted down and killed. Around 3,000 cougars are killed every year in the US, and several hundreds are held captive in zoos. Bears are incredibly powerful, stoic creatures who inhabit forests, Arctic tundras, and mountainsides. 8 known species of bears exist, ranging in weight from 60 pounds, the sun bear, to a whopping 1,000 pounds, the polar bear. Their minds are vastly intelligent, and they are excellent navigators with a strong memory. They are omnivores and eat berries, nuts, seeds, fish, and insects mostly. They scavenge quite frequently, and the scent that human campers bring of fresh fruits can captivate them. Improper storage of this food often leads to bear encounters, which are typically non-violent if handled properly. But if not, it can lead to the bear's execution. Many bears are killed when encountering frightened elk hunters, who are already way too comfortable with killing animals. An alternative method that is actually much more effective than a gun at keeping a bear away from you is bear spray. Please keep it on you if you go out to bear territory so that a possible interaction does not result in the loss of someone's life. I say this because human interaction is often a death sentence for bears. Around 70% of adult bear deaths are attributed to humans. Many of our encounters with them are due to the fact that their natural habitat continues to get smaller and smaller as humans colonize more and more rural land. If we live in harmony with these animals, then our presence isn't necessarily bad. However, many people who do live out in the country do so for animal farming purposes, and because of that view bears as a threat. Aside from the human threat bears face in the wild, some bears are used in circuses or are kept captive in zoos. In circuses, bear cubs are often chained by their necks and forced to stand on their hind legs for long periods of time. This behavior is extremely unnatural for them, as they would usually only do this briefly to gain a greater perspective of their environment. They are trained through brutal methods to ride bikes and walk on their front legs in a sort of handstand. Performing is an entirely stressful experience for them, and they are kept in small cages when not performing or training. Psychological problems occur in such unnatural and cruel conditions. Additionally, there are bear farms where these animals are kept in cages often so small they cannot turn around, and their bile is collected for alternative medicine. Stored in their gallbladder, their bile is extracted from them intrusively in ways that often cause infections. In China, around 10,000 bears are kept in these farms, and their bile is put in products such as pills and shampoos. Trophy hunting. Trophy hunting is truly one of the most unnecessary and egoic practices I can think of. Hundreds of thousands of animals globally are killed in the wild by hunters, not for their flesh, but almost excessively for bragging rights. Mounts or whole-body taxidermy will immortalize their accomplishment. In the US, trophy animals killed largely consist of bears, cougars, wolves, and other native predators. Some US hunters feel that that is not enough and will fly to other nations to kill their wild animals. For those who don't want to make the flight, they can still kill exotic, wild animals, because in the United States, we have places specifically dedicated to house exotic animals for hunters to kill. These are known as canned hunts, where animals are in enclosed spaces with the hunter and have zero chance of escape. There are several of these facilities in Texas and South Africa. In fact, more rhinoceros, bison, and lions exist in this industry than in their natural habitats. Just like in other areas of animal agriculture, there are breeding facilities to fuel this carnage. 250 of these breeding facilities raise 8,000 lion cubs in South Africa for the purpose of canned hunts. The film Blood Lions depicts this brutal trade. The methods of killing these animals in captivity in the wild are often cowardly and ineffective. One particular famous case is of the black-maned lion called Cecil by humans. He lived in Zimbabwe and was lured out with bait, then shot with an arrow. He then suffered for more than 10 hours as the hunters continued tracking him. Eventually, they found and killed him. Why? For a trophy. Cecil's death rightfully sparked outrage across the globe and placed a social pressure against trophy hunting. Still, the hunt continues. Americans have been importing an annual average of 126,000 trophies from animals they murdered after spending sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars to do so. A staggering 1,200 different species are hunted for trophies, the most popular being the Big Five: lions, rhinos, Cape buffalo, elephants, and leopards. There is a common argument brought up that the approximately $200 million brought into African nations a year via trophy hunting provides an incentive for locals to protect and preserve local wildlife populations. While there is truth to this, it's deeply unfortunate that the incentive to keep them alive is so that foreigners may come and kill them so that they can profit. There are layers to this issue. However, my ground is steady. Nobody's life should be for sale, especially when they have literally no say in the matter. The life of this planet deserves respect, regardless of if there is an economic incentive to do so. Within the last 50 years, 60% of known wildlife has vanished, due both directly and indirectly to human activity. This is why it is of the utmost importance that we protect the wildlife we have left. They're precious. You're precious. I love you.
I love you.
You're precious.
You're precious.
The exotic animal trade. Wildlife trafficking is estimated to be a $19 billion a year industry. The people who generally participate in this industry do it for money and ego. If their trade wipes out the species, they'll simply move on to the next one. It's far less dangerous for them consequence-wise compared to human or drug trafficking, and it's much easier to get away with because many law enforcement agencies are not properly informed or trained in this area. Some areas of the trade are legal, while others are not. U.S. citizens are estimated to presently have 17 million exotic animals in their homes or properties. In comparison, Canadians have about 1.4 million. Millions of animals are stolen from their home or bred into existence to be sold off and live an unnatural life in a strange new world. There is no real definition for exotic animals, as the term exotic differs based upon where you live. It's generally used to describe animals such as lizards, monkeys, zebras, tigers, hedgehogs, lions, and leopards. Breeding these animals for sale is mostly legal, but the capturing of these animals from the wild to be shipped overseas is criminal in most places. The monetary incentive outshines the loosely upheld laws, though, so the trade continues on. The journey of many of these creatures begins in places like Africa, Australia, and the jungles of Brazil. African gray parrots have suffered a steep decline in their population, as much as 99% in some regions due to poaching. Otter cubs are being abducted at shockingly high rates. Dogs will be used by poachers to sniff out beaver dens, where they will then violently murder the baby's parents, who are fiercely protective of their young. Once captured, they often change hands many times before reaching their final destination. To evade being detected at customs and airport security, drastic measures are taken to hide the stolen animals. This is, I believe, all a quote. Parrots might have their beaks and feet taped and be stuffed into plastic tubes that can be easily hidden in luggage. And stolen bird and reptile eggs are concealed in special vests so the couriers may pass through x-ray machines at the airport. Baby turtles have been taped so they are trapped inside their shells and moved by the dozens in tubing socks. And infant pythons have been shipped in CD cases. In one case, a man who was arrested at the Los Angeles airport had Asian leopard cats in a backpack, birds of paradise in additional luggage, and pygmy monkeys in his underwear. Their chance of survival? We have a mortality rate of about 80%, says a German custom agent. Once they arrive, many are sold to zoos, independent owners, and pet stores. An investigation conducted by PETA of U.S. Global Exotics led to a raid of their warehouse in Arlington, Texas. Here, approximately 27,000 animals were found in overcrowded conditions without proper access to food or water. Over 400 iguanas have been left in shipping crates without any care for nearly 2 weeks due to a canceled order. Half of them were found dead. 6,000 of the rescued animals died shortly after being recovered due to their previous neglect, and hundreds more were found dead on the scene. This was just one warehouse. For those who do survive the initial capture, shipment, and delivery process, they're often abused and neglected in the hands of their owner. Many people are simply not equipped to care for these animals as they are meant to live in the wild. Even in caring hands, it's impossible to provide them with the space and freedom that their natural environment allows for. For example, a free African gray parrot spends their typical day flying for miles in gorgeous environments. While in captivity, they often have their feathers clipped to prevent them from escaping. To quote the World Animal Protection Fund, at least 75% of pet snakes, lizards, tortoises, and turtles die within 1 year of becoming a pet. In some instances, those who hold these animals captive make the decision to release them into a wild environment that they are not native to or prepared to survive in. This sometimes causes them to starve to death or have deadly encounters with humans. In one instance, a man named Terry Thompson, who breeds and imprisons exotic animals, decided to release all of his captive animals before committing suicide. He did so in Ohio, where local authorities have no proper training in how to handle this type of situation using non-lethal force, which isn't their strong suit to begin with. In result, they killed off all of the animals released that day. 1 baboon, 2 wolves, 2 grizzlies, 3 mountain lions, 6 black bears, 17 lions, and 18 Bengal tigers. That's crazy. Why should one person have that many animals? Like in general, unless you have a sanctuary, like a genuine sanctuary, but just for funsies, 18 tigers, 17 lions, oh my goodness. I can't even imagine what like the streets looked like that day. Okay. When humans intrude upon territories they would not usually venture, aside from to capture and or kill the native species, they present a threat to themselves and humanity in general. Salmonellosis, for example, is a zoonotic disease carried by many reptiles that can be easily transferred to humans. In fact, quote, human contact with reptiles and other exotic animals accounts for 70,000 cases of salmonellosis each year, end quote. In the past, we've seen major outbreaks of zoonotic diseases such as sudden acute respiratory syndrome, SARS, Ebola virus, H1N1, and monkeypox. Presently, we are witnessing COVID-19 unfold across the globe. While the origins of this illness still remain unconfirmed, the general consensus points to it having non-human animal origins. The first major outbreak was linked to a wet market in Wuhan, China, where the wild animals were sold both alive and dead. The government placed sweeping regulations on the trade following the outbreak. The Congressional Research Committee states in the report, Wildlife Trade, COVID-19 and Other Zoonotic Diseases, that, quote, transmission of zoonotic diseases, i.e. zoonosis, is reportedly facilitated by activities such as land clearing, close human-animal contact, e.g. in live animal markets, hunting and consuming wild animals, and the wildlife trade. SARS-CoV-2 is one of the several zoonotic viruses that are closely linked to this trade, which brings human and wild animals into close proximity. The trade increases the risk of virus transmission between hosts that might not otherwise interact in nature, leading some scientists to contend that wildlife trade can exacerbate the spread of zoonosis." End quote. It is estimated that 75% of today's infectious diseases are a result of zoonosis, meaning if we want to prevent major outbreaks that could wipe out millions of humans, then we must stop disrespecting and degrading the natural habitats and native species of our planet. If not, then we will continue to experience the consequences of our actions. Bees. Bees are one of the most ecologically important insects in the world. They're little pollinating superheroes with 5 eyes that can beat their wings up to 200 times per second when in flight. There are many species of bees, but today we'll be focusing on honeybees. The honeybee hive is occupied by the queen bee, whose primary role is reproduction, accompanied by male drones and female workers who have a variety of jobs. The workers and drones can live anywhere between a few weeks to a few months, while the queen can live up to 5 years. Foragers are the bees we most often see, as they are the ones responsible for collecting pollen and nectar. These foragers collect the nectar from around 2 million flowers in order to make 1 pound of honey. On an individual level, a forager bee will make about 1/12 a teaspoon of honey in her entire life. This honey is made to provide the hive with nutrients during the winter seasons, where they'll be in need of it most. The process of a bee making honey is as follows, quote, "Honey is produced by bees by swallowing nectar, regurgitating it, and then repeating this process many times. During this process, their organisms add enzymes to nectar. Bees store honey in honeycombs by regurgitating it into a cell." It's like throwing it up. The cell is then capped with wax. This process takes place so the honey can be consumed by bees in the future, end quote. A beehive is a complex social network that humans are just barely beginning to understand. They communicate using a sort of dance based on sight, motion, and scent. They can perceive time, lead members of their hive to food, scout for locations for a new hive to be built, and alert one another to danger. When the time comes for a new queen to be born, the old queen and half of the hive leave to set up their new home at a location predetermined by scouting bees. Pesticides, various diseases, habitat loss, and climate change have led to a collapse in honeybee and native bee populations. These bees are responsible for pollinating about 130 agricultural crops, making them an absolutely essential species. This, unfortunately, doesn't appear to be enough of a reason for us to protect them and ensure their survival. What humans are after is their honey and labor. Some honeybees live naturally in the wild or are cared for by a small backyard beekeeper who genuinely wishes them well and protects them from the elements. This is not the case for most honeybees, though. Just like other animals raised in industrial agricultural industries, they are put in unnatural conditions, subjected to exploitation and selective breeding practices which are harmful to their species. The white boxes associated with beekeeping exist so the beekeeper can move the hive from place to place and easily steal their honey. Queen bees are often drugged and their wings are clipped to keep them immobile and passive. Swarming, when half the hive separates after the birth of a new queen, often causes a decline in honey production since half of the bees leave. This is unacceptable to someone whose sole purpose with these creatures is to take their hard work. This is why they have to keep the queens under their control. In the winter months, some beekeepers will literally burn their entire hives if it's too cold to keep them alive. They will also sometimes do this if a disease has emerged in the hive. Due to selective breeding of honeybees, when one hive catches a disease, it is highly contagious to other bee colonies because of their genetic similarities. These honeybees, often shipped and moved across the country, can easily spread diseases and parasites to the native bee populations. In addition to honey, some other bee products that exist in the market because of bee exploitation are bee pollen, royal jelly, bee milk, beeswax, propolis, bee venom, and bee brood. Pollen is collected by bees on little sacs on their leg. Beekeepers sometimes put devices on the front of the hive entrance that will collect some of the pollen from them. This requires them to work much harder for the same amount of pollen to be collected since it's constantly being taken from them. Royal jelly is a unique fluid fed to the queen and all the larvae under 3 days old. If a new queen needs to be chosen, then the larvae will be continuously fed the royal jelly, which will elicit a series of chemical changes in the bee's body, leading her to become the queen, which is so cool. This jelly is stolen from queens to be, requiring the nursing bees to work much harder. Beeswax is created on the underside of the bee and is used to build and restore the hive. For however much beeswax that needs to be produced, that bee must consume 8 times the amount of honey. The process is very strenuous for the bee and becomes even more so when the humans take it from them for cosmetics and candles. Propolis is used as a sort of glue to repair small holes in the hive and as an antiseptic to keep infections from the hive. Bee venom is released when a bee stings someone or something being used to extract their venom. Their lower abdomen gets ruptured as they try to pull out their stinger and they experience a dreadful death. Their venom is used medicinally for humans, but at a great cost to their lives. The final product collected from bees is quite disturbing: bee brood. This translates to baby bees. Their bodies are collected and killed at early developmental stages, then eaten by humans. As you can see, quite literally everything is taken from bees for human benefit. This abuse reaches far beyond just honeybees, but affects other pollinators on this planet too. How many species of bees do you think there are? 10, 20, 100? The answer is 20,000. Of those, about 4,000 are native to North America. So where are all these other bees? Well, simply put, the way honeybees are being farmed is pushing other native bee species to the brink of extinction. A majority of industrial honey beekeepers now migrate their captive bees across the country for profitable pollination. Bees are most extensively used for almond fields, largely in California. In that state, there are so many almond fields that if you were to put them together, they would equate to the size of Delaware. This $11 billion industry is quite bee intensive, requiring 10 times more bees than apples, who need the second most bees. Trucked across the country, these bees are roused from their winter cluster a couple months early in order to pollinate almond fields. Here, they're in a monoculture hellscape. Diverse landscapes are heaven for bees, but modern-day massive monoculture fields doused in toxic pesticides are deadly to them. About 2.7 million commercial beehives are recorded in the U.S. In the early weeks of February, approximately 80% of the nation's honeybees are brought to pollinate these 1.4 million acres of almonds. This forced social gathering is a cesspool for deadly diseases to spread, and they do. Just one field may house thousands of hives, not to mention the native bee populations, who now have millions of foreign bees to compete with for food. The honeybees often pass on illnesses to already vulnerable bee populations while simultaneously taking away their only food source. It's not the bees' fault. I mean, they literally trekked across the country for this, but... According to EcoWatch, in the last half-decade alone, 30% of the national bee population has disappeared, and nearly a third of all bee colonies in the U.S. have perished. We need bees. This isn't good. After 1.2 months of pollinating almonds, the bees are generally moved across the country to pollinate nearly 100 more crops. All the while, the honey they produce and the pollen they collect is robbed from them. Honeybees are natural pollinators. However, they're not meant to travel vast amounts of distances in cramped quarters while having everything they create stolen from them. If we want to support bee colonies, we have to start at home. One simple step is to not purchase any bee products or support industrialized beekeepers. Instead, support your native pollinators at home. Bees are essential for the pollination of a third of global crops and nearly 90% of wild plant species. Without them, our world would look much different. In order to help local bee and other pollinator populations in your community, plant nectar-rich native flowers and plants. Here's a short list of bee-friendly plants. Note, make sure to purchase or collect seeds that are pesticide-free, as pesticides can kill bees. Lavender, rosemary, fruit trees, catnip, oregano, cucumber, squash, and melons. All great for bees. Just a reminder, the bees need honey and we don't. We don't. So just leave it to the bees. Silkworms. Silkworms spin cocoons that protect them while they go through their metamorphosis that allows them to become a moth. The fiber they create and use to spin their cocoons is what humans know as silk. In the silk industry, the process of harvesting the silk typically involves the deaths of those who created them. There is a way of doing this without murder, however it's often not enacted. Domesticated silkworms, also known as Bombyx mori, are raised on farms and fed mulberry leaves until they begin to spin their cocoons. Once they finish spinning themselves a cocoon using the silk secreted from 2 glands on their head, they begin their transformation. This phase of their life is known as the pupal stage. Unfortunately, their life cycle will be cut short here and their transformation process is robbed from them. Naturally, when the being is ready to emerge, they will eat their way out of the cocoon. This breaks up the silk strands, and humans aren't too fond of that. So a simple solution silk farmers have come to is to boil them alive while they're still in the cocoon. This way, the fibers stay intact and begin unraveling nicely while the creature inside violently dies. Sometimes they instead opt to either freeze or bake them alive. On average, for 1 pound of silk, 3,000 animals are killed. As mentioned before, there is a way of harvesting silk that doesn't kill the silkworm. There are some companies who utilize the silk after the moth has chewed their way free, or others who use a different type of silkworm, known as the Sumini ricini, who spin their cocoons with little openings in the end which they crawl out of. While these methods are far less problematic, the production of silk is still ethically questionable, as it does involve domestication, breeding, farming, and exploitation of these creatures. Ultimately, animals and insects are not ours to use, nor are the things they make. And that is where we're going to be ending it today. Now, this is actually where the animal section of the book, the non-human animal section of the book ends, and the human section begins. So I do want to get to that, but I did start research for other animals that I did not touch on in the book that I think I'd like to touch on before humans. I don't remember all that was there, but I believe that there are shellfish and I believe octopuses and turtles, and I think there was going to be another one as well, but I'm going to do some research this week and next week get back to you guys with some information that wasn't in the book that I would like to put in the second edition of this book. And then the next week we will be talking about humans and the way that animal agriculture affects us. We'll be talking about humans, and I don't know how long the human section is. We might literally just talk about that, but we'll likely be talking about the human impact and the environmental impact in one episode. So wow, it's just raining so hard. So I'm looking forward to talking about that with you, and I appreciate your presence here. If you have any thoughts or questions or comments or whatever, please leave them below. Reach out to me on social media. If you have my number, you can message me or whatever. I hope that, you take what you need to from this and, send it to someone who needs to hear it. Alrighty. Hope you have a really good day. Love you. Bye.